Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a behavior that honestly almost all of us do, and usually without even realizing it. We're going to dive deep into the body-based roots of people-pleasing, and we'll explore exactly why we so often find ourselves agreeing to things we desperately want to refuse. So, let's kick things off with a question that cuts right to the heart of this incredibly common behavioral loop. Have you ever said yes before your mind even processed what was being asked? Like someone asks for a favor, and before your brain even catches up to the words, your mouth is cheerfully volunteering your entire Saturday to help them move a heavy sofa up 3 flights of stairs. It's so frustrating, right? Well, let's figure out exactly why that happens.
Section 1. The yes before the thought. Let's look at a hypothetical person. We'll call her Sarah. Now, Sarah has done the work. She goes to therapy, she does her CBT worksheets, and she can articulately explain her personal boundaries at dinner parties. But last Thursday, her flatmate casually asked her to cover a shift at work, and despite all of that psychological insight, before she even had a conscious thought about it, she automatically agreed.
This beautifully illustrates the immediate physical sequence of this reflex. Boom, her mouth says yes. Instantly, her heart just sinks. Her shoulders creep right up defensively toward her ears, and her stomach tightly contracts, into the shape of someone who just gave away something they really couldn't afford to give. These somatic reactions just stack up like heavy weights before she even has a fraction of a second to process it. But here's the crucial point: the timeline. All of that physical tension, the instant yes, the sinking heart, the tight stomach, it all happens in just 400 milliseconds. That is literally less than half a second between stimulus and response. And the hard truth is, no amount of intellectual understanding or, reading books on boundaries is fast enough to catch a physiological reaction that lightning fast. And this is exactly why your thinking mind was never actually in charge of this interaction. We spend so much time rationalizing, doing thought records, analyzing our behavior with pure logic. But that conscious mind, it's just writing articulate commentary on a game that is already being played out in the nervous system. It's procedural, it's automatic, and it completely bypasses logic.
Moving on to Section 2, the fourth survival response. Let's see how this builds into a much broader and, frankly, absolutely fascinating psychological framework.
Look, we've all heard of the big 3 survival responses, right? Fight, flight, and freeze. They are basically cultural buzzwords at this point. But psychotherapist Pete Walker expands our traditional understanding of these trauma responses to reveal a crucial 4th strategy, and that is fawning. Now, what is really a game changer about this framework is how it fundamentally redefines what we usually just brush off as people-pleasing. Fawning is not a personality flaw. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a survival strategy where you seek safety by entirely merging with the wishes and demands of others. Just imagine a child with an unpredictable caregiver. They couldn't fight, they couldn't flee, so their nervous system brilliantly adapted by appeasing them, keeping the peace just to stay safe. But here's the catch. What happens when that child grows up? As adults, this once brilliant survival tactic kind of morphs into chronic people-pleasing. We see an almost complete loss of personality outside of what other people want from us. We automatically appease people in incredibly low-stakes situations, like, say, a flatmate asking to cover a shift, and we completely suppress our own needs by overfunctioning in all our relationships. Which brings us to Section 3, why the body remembers. To truly understand why this response is so stubbornly automatic, we've got to look at the underlying mechanics of memory, leaning on Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's foundational research. Van der Kolk demonstrated something absolutely revolutionary. He showed that cumulative trauma, even just the seemingly small trauma of early emotional scarcity, isn't stored in our brains as a neat little story or a narrative we can recall. It's stored as procedural memory. That means it is an implicit, automatic, body-based memory. It's the held breath before a confrontation. It's the flinch before the fear. It's a physical reflex perfectly designed to protect you. As the saying goes, the body is not your enemy. It is your oldest historian. When your stomach drops or your jaw tightens, your body isn't betraying you. It's simply keeping records. It remembers every single moment you weren't safe, and it keeps those records in the only language it has available: sensation, posture, and tension. All right, Section 4, fear disguised as kindness. Now, heads up, this section involves a massive paradigm shift in how we view our own generosity, and it might really reframe how you look at your own behavior. Pete Walker frames the core wound of the fawn response in a pretty challenging way. He suggests that what we often view as extreme generosity is actually a form of codependency rooted entirely in fear. The key is your underlying motivation here. Are you saying yes because you authentically want to give, or are you engaged in fear-driven compliance just to avoid conflict or abandonment?
It is absolutely vital we recognize this distinction. The fawn type often mistakes profound self-erasure for being a good, generous person. I mean, let that sink in for a second, mistaking self-erasure for kindness. When we automatically appease others, we literally wipe away our own needs and identity just for a fleeting sense of safety. We aren't actually being kind, we're just being protective.
So Section 5, the path to recovery. Let's transition to the practical level and look at how we actually go about unlearning these deeply ingrained reflexes.
The recovery work involves a very specific sequence of tuning into the body. Because the problem lives in the body's procedural memory, the solution has to start right there too. You have to differentiate authentic care from fear-based compliance, and you do that by following 3 steps: recognizing holding sites, engaging in somatic movement, and rebuilding healthy anger.
A fantastic place to start is simply doing a full body scan to identify your own somatic holding sites. Does your jaw clench up? Does your throat tighten? Do you feel a heaviness in your chest, a sudden contraction in your belly, or tension in your hips? This is where your nervous system physically hoards the tension of the fawn response. Just noticing it is step 1. Step 2 involves what we call sacred movement. Using somatic techniques helps short-circuit that anxious, automatic anticipation. For example, moving into a yoga pose like Warrior Eye grounds you firmly in the present moment, asserting your physical presence. And then smoothly transitioning into child's pose while doing a body scan allows you to safely check in with those holding sites we just talked about. And finally, step 3. Pete Walker emphasizes that the ultimate key to recovery, the true antidote to fawning, is actually rebuilding your capacity to feel and express healthy anger. The entire purpose of the fawn response in childhood was to suppress your own assertion and your own anger so you wouldn't rock the boat. Reclaiming that anger is exactly how you rebuild healthy boundaries. I want you to consider this powerful internal command. Today, you listen to the body's oldest language. You do not need to fix what you find. You only need to hear it. This serves as such a vital reminder for anyone doing this work. The goal right now isn't to forcefully fix your physical reactions. Your goal is simply to grant your body the empathetic, patient audience it never had when those survival responses were forming. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to chew on today. The next time you feel those stacking weights, the immediate yes, the sinking heart, the tight stomach, just pause. What is your oldest historian actually asking you to hear? Thank you so much for exploring this with me. Pay attention to what your body is saying, and until next time, keep learning.